Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality, and we're so glad you're here. This is a viewer and listener-supported podcast, so we greatly appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, share, and subscribe to any of the social media content platforms that you're using. And then if you go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, you can make a one-time donation, or with a monthly subscription, you'll gain access to our bonus content. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. All right, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. Thanks for tuning in on this episode. And I am excited to introduce you to Samir Selmanovic. And Samir and I met actually about 1 year ago, Samir, in New York City. Rod Colburn, you and I had lunch together. Probably it was in August of last year in, I can't remember the restaurant.
Tartinery at the Columbus Circle restaurant. Yeah.
And we met and I got to know you a little bit then. But then since then, we've had some connections. We went to the Telluride Film Festival together, and I learned what a master chef you were. You cooked up some of the best food I've ever had. I don't eat like that in my life. So that was amazing. I've joined you in your Turn Community Project, which we'll talk more about that in the interview here. But Samir is from Croatia, and he's a life coach. He's a corporate coach for CEOs, business leaders of all types. He's a creative. He has got one of the most fascinating stories I've run across. So I'm excited to have introduce you to people who listen to my podcast and hear some of your story and what's on your heart these days. So thank you so much for joining us at Spirituality Adventures.
Thank you, Fred, for having me. It's a great honor to be here, and it's very exciting what you're doing. So
just by way, just another quick intro point. You did a bachelor's in I'm blanking in engineering, I think.
Structural engineering, yes.
Structural engineering, two masters, one master of divinity, one master's in something.
Developmental psychology,
and then you did a PhD in human development.
Yes.
As well.
Right.
And also you've been an atheist and a pastor and a whole bunch of, you're a mystic. I just think of all the different ways we could describe Samir.
Yeah.
So it's delightful. So let's start with you. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? Give us a little feel for your growing up years, your family life, and your faith life in your growing up years, or lack thereof,
Yeah. I grew up in Zagreb, which is capital of Croatia. My parents came from two different places. My dad came from Montenegro, and he was a Muslim. And my mom from Slovenia, which is Roman Catholic. So they came to high school, decided to stay there, got two kids, a car, and all of that. And they were pretty much sort of done with religion, both of them. They were in an atheist environment. And then suddenly I spring up after my high school. I go to serve the army there. And I come back converted, born again kind of a situation. And of course,
how did that happen? And how does that happen in the army? How does an atheist get converted in the Croatian army? I'm just curious.
The Yugoslavian army, 14 months, obligatory for everybody. So, it's a place where you have a lot of time to reflect. People come of age there. You're kind of 17, and I met a guy who was a Christian, and he put me on his prayer list, and then took me off his prayer list because I was impossible, and I just made fun of him. I had my own way of looking at life. And then I started reading the Bible, and I started talking about it, and suddenly something clicked, almost like a 2D world becomes 3D, or black and white becomes color feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
You see the spiritual dimension of life, that not everything that's real is visible. And then I sort of kind of, like submitted myself to the fact that truth is more than rational.
Mm.
And I just kind of this was an entry for me into that world. And yeah, then I came back. That was hard because it was sort of like underground there. It was very punishable thing to do.
Yeah.
Because ideological environment there was, you cannot have Bible or anything like that. Or so it was counterculture. Basically, I felt like I joined a culture in my world. Right. So here it would be similar to somebody in a mega church becoming an atheist or gay or, or a Muslim or, in an environment where everybody, all of your friends and family are part of the church or one of the mega churches. And suddenly you are 22 and you are becoming, shamanic priest.
Right.
So it's pretty, it's kind of opposite than here. And it feels good to be a countercultural of that time. And then when I came back home and joined the church and became part of it, I joined it with great spirit and great commitment, to it, and decided that after structural engineering, I'm going to go to the United States and study and become a pastor. Right.
And what kind of church did you get involved in?
It was a Seventh-day Adventist church.
And was that the same faith that the person who was the Christian who shared with you, who prayed for you, was he or she a Seventh-day Adventist?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. There were others. There were a Baptist guy there. There was a Eastern Orthodox, and we had debates and discussions and all of that. But even in those, Protestants protesting and all of that kind of situation, you are immersed into the whole new conversation. So everybody contributed in some way.
It's interesting. Since I've met you and Rod Colburn, I've met more Seventh-day Adventists or former Seventh-day Adventists or recovering however you want to talk about it, and than I'd ever met. Like in my whole journey, I'd studied Seventh-day Adventists. I know what it's about, how it founded, all that stuff. But I don't think I ever ran across, like, I can't think of one personal friend that I had that was Seventh-day Adventist or former Seventh-day Adventist or something like that.
Oh, you will surely know when the end time comes, we will be right and you will be wrong, and we are taking over the world and we will be your masters.
Right. Well,
it's very simple.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing that I've gotten to know a few of them then, right?
You have a connection. At least you have a protection now.
Yeah. At least I can say, hey, I'm friends with this guy.
Exactly.
Let me in. All right. So, okay. So you come to America, and did you go to like a Seventh-day Adventist university in America to study?
Yeah, we came to Chicago, worked for a couple of years. I was working in construction. Although I had an engineering degree, I had to do a scraping of the walls on the burned down houses to survive, kind of a thing. But yeah, that was kind of a fiery experience of being an immigrant. And that was a really, really formative experience for me. The whole thing of being a stranger and learning to belong and all that. And then went to graduate school for theology, and the war broke out there right after I came, the big war in Bosnia, Croatia, Serbia, Slovenia, and I was happy to be here. And so and I loved school. So I kept going to school, so I don't have to go back and be drafted for the war I didn't believe in. Mm-hmm. And so came to study, and then we decided we were going to go back. We were not going to stay here. For 6 years, we didn't even think of staying here. Mm. And then because my wife was pregnant with our second child, and first one was born here, we wanted the second one to be born and then go back. I took a year of internship here in New York City. before going.
And where did you and your wife is Vesna, and I had the privilege of hanging out with her in Telluride last May at the film festival. And where did you meet Vesna?
Vesna, I met her. She was a member of the church in Croatia.
Okay.
And she was like these princess there. And very, protected, very kind of a calm, structured environment. And I was the outsider. I was like a vagabond, kind of a bandit situation, right? And her parents got really spooked by the whole thing. But, we found each other as a great compliments, and so we decided, okay, well, let's do this, and then we just got married. And when came to United States we told people in American embassy that we are going for a honeymoon here.
Okay.
And that's how we got tourist visa.
Oh.
And then we switched to student visa here, right, which was a very tricky thing to do. So we had this white lie with American embassy. Otherwise, we wouldn't get it in. We just say, hey, we have so much money. We don't know what to do. We're getting married. We want to spend it in the US for a trip. Can you let us in? And Americans obviously fell for that and said, yeah, come spend money. Great. We will play on that card. And then we came here and then stayed. And switched then from student visa to my work visa. And after 1 year here working in New York, we had a big conversation one evening. We got a babysitter, went to a Starbucks and said, are we going back or are we staying? And we both voted for staying. And then half of your heart goes back and half stays here. But if you go back, half of your heart stays here anyway. So it's painful either way. So,
yeah. So you have how many children? I know there are two
girls. They are 25 and 27.
And so you stayed. Vesna was pregnant with your second child, so you stayed longer in America. Is that right? Did I catch you?
Right. Just before we just got an agreement for a year to stay, and we didn't promise people here that we will stay after a year. But the person who brought us said, we want you to stay, but we said, we will not promise. We only have 1 year. Well, try it. And then we came and then we met, Rod was there. He was the elder in that congregation.
In Manhattan?
Yeah, in Manhattan. He was the first person I met there as a member.
Okay.
He was there when we pulled in with the truck,
For those who don't, Rod Colburn is a friend that I met about a year ago through Doug Padgett. And so I've had Doug on the podcast, and
he is a great talker.
Yeah. Gosh, really enjoyed that. And then I've actually had Shelley Padgett on too, and we talked about meditation and stuff, and
beautiful
yoga, meditation conversation. So that's how I met Samir, is through Rod Colburn. And Rod lives in Manhattan, and he grew up in Asia as a Seventh-day Adventist missionary kid. In Asia, if I caught that right. Yeah. So you meet Rod at this church in Manhattan. They're trying to talk you into staying. Is that
right? Yeah. Well, we were, figuring out each other, and then pretty soon, I was going to get a senior pastor for the congregation. I was going to be associate or assistant, but nobody either wanted to come, dared to come, or conference kind of became conservative after I came, and they didn't let anybody that congregation actually wanted. And so I ended up for 6 years there, being associate pastor by myself.
Wow.
That was, I got, so much has happened in the 6 years. You can imagine 9/11 happened at that time, right in the middle.
Wow.
And I, so I became
you're pastoring a Seventh-day Adventist church in Manhattan when 9/11 happened.
Yes.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. And there was a Michael Bach. He was our member, and I really sort of groomed him to be a chairman of the board for a couple of years, and he was elected. And a week before 9/11, and 9/11 was his first day at work, and he was on the first tower on 94th floor. An airplane hit into his office, the first airplane.
Wow.
And we lost him. So the church was very wounded, and we worked a year round, like for the next 12 months on steroids to deal with that, and which bonded us. Every crisis bonds people, which was really
I'm curious.
Beautiful in some way.
I want to ask, just pause here for a minute. When I was in Kansas City pastoring Vineyard Church when 9/11 happened. And the crazy thing was we had met in a middle school for 10 years and grown to about 400 people. And then we'd bought land, built a building, and sent out a big mass mailer, kind of for a grand opening service. And it hit people's mailboxes the week of 9/11. So 9/11 was on a Tuesday, and our grand opening service was the following Sunday. So we went from 400 to 800 people in 1 week. We grew from 3 to 400 in 10 years. And then in 1 week after 9/11, people just showed up at church in droves, and we were having our grand opening and all that in this new building. And I remember all the pastors in America that I was listening to, like evangelical pastors, they were talking about how this was judgment on America for homosexuals, or it was, or they were fostering hatred toward the, Muslims and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just listening to all these messages coming out, and I had already developed a heart for the Arab Muslim world. And I had friends that, that I'd partnered with in the Arab Muslim world. And so I started talking about loving Muslims almost immediately.
Right.
Which,
good luck for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But it's kind of like, well, hey, even if Muslims are enemies, which I wasn't willing to say that, but in people's minds, that was in the air, And so then I was like, well, then what would Jesus do? What does he teach us to do with our enemies? Is love, So let's love. Anyway, and then we started trying to connect with our local mosques here in Kansas City. Tried to do some love and service kind of stuff, and that was really against the stream. I'm sure you went against the stream as well too. I know you did, because of your background and everything.
Right. I mean, we opened the church. We brought Muslim leaders of all kinds, from New York, and put them on a stage for a conversation, with them. Good people who have been fighting these extremists for decades, people who have lost people who are far more threatened by the extremists than you and I as Christians are. Because if this extremist has one bullet, and then there is another Muslim who is not extremist, and you who is not a Muslim, they would spare the bullet on the brother. Right. So going against people who are fighting their extremism from within, it's just the dumbest thing you can do, like opposite of what you can do. So we tried to, and I was, I was working for when the Ground Zero Mosque thing came. Remember, there was a big issue there. I was very close with Imam Faisal and Daisy Khan, who were leading that mosque, and I was there for the first meeting in the community when they got permit. And the New York Post came out with this monster mosque article. So I was there as a minister to support them. Before there was anything on the news, we didn't think of it anything. And then I ended up working for them for 4 months as a Christian advisor for their, public relations and marketing and whatever they were doing to help them deal with Christian environment from their perspective. There was there were news media from the whole world here for a long, long time when we were dealing with that.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm curious. So you're pastoring, and I'm curious. Were you ever a very conservative Christian person, or were you always kind of more progressive and operating outside the box? Were you
right?
Because your book came out in 2009, and the title, and this is still available on Amazon.com. It's really all about God: Reflections of a Muslim, Atheist, Jewish Christian, which is the subtitle alone.
Yeah.
If you want to read it,
The paperback subtitle is How Islam, Atheism, and Judaism Made Me a Better Christian.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. So that's you came out with a different subtitle on the paper.
Yeah, because you need other faiths to support you.
I thought you just should have thrown Buddhist in there too, but anyway.
Yeah, maybe I would today, but I kind of kept it at Abrahamic religions and atheism.
Yeah, right.
What is good about them that Christians can learn?
Yeah, and so were you ever like Mr. Conservative Seventh-day Adventist at one time?
Yeah, I was. I mean, once I converted. When you convert, there's a lot of turmoil happens. You're challenged from every side. You're challenged conceptually, you're challenged socially, you're disturbing friendships, family, everything, right? And then you need to ground yourself and put down your stakes and build a wall in order to survive with your new identity, because the environment wants to push you back. So you are trying to find anything you can hold on to that you do not want to question, something that stands. And I was looking for things I can really stand for, like, for example, Jesus. But also, there's eschatology, there's about being right, there's about bringing truth to the world, there's about missionary role, the explanation of everything. I had my phase, when I was thumping the Bible and as a 20-year-old approaching 50-year-old person and telling them, look, I can tell you about the meaning of life if you have 5 minutes. And they look at me like, what? You have a milk bottle still, like, go away. Like, that's so ridiculous that these converts are going to people who have lived life of truth and grace, and they're grounded and fulfilled and strong and serving the world. And they're approaching, I would approach them with the Bible and say, hey, like, how about I tell you what it is all about? Mm-hmm. Like, it's an eyesore. I mean, we don't even understand what that means to people because we are so zealous. Right. But, a lot of good people look at you with sympathy, and smile and say, yeah, good for you, Mm-hmm. So, yeah, there was that period. But then I started shedding things that one by one, you have to go to some sort of radical simplicity about what really smaller and smaller things number of things start to matter more and more. Right. And then sooner you realize that actually the division between the truth, between the insiders to the truth and grace and outsiders goes through every human being, not between the groups of people. So when Jesus was talking about the church, he meant any human being, 2 or 3, when they're together and conspire love in the world, they are the church. I will be there. I will be there.
I like that.
So.
Yeah. So you had kind of a progressive move. You incrementally moved toward more progressive type of faith. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, if these labels can hold, I would say it more radical faith.
Okay.
I think the way it's called progressive now, it's actually more radical because it requires from you more. It requires more faith from you, more depth, more work. It's more nuanced. It's just I feel it's a natural thing to grow like that. I think, sometimes people like us who have left sort of the ministry because of all the experiences that were so disruptive to our lives, we think like, all right, we look back and we kind of lick our wounds and say, hey, what is the consolation prize here? Right? Like we say, well, the God is everywhere. I can do this. I can do this ministry. I can do that. But ultimately, religion was meant to be left behind. It's when it works, you leave it, because it actually organizes all of your prejudice. It organizes all of your oversimplifications about God, and you give it a chance and you give it a time and you realize it's not actually, I need to move on. Doesn't mean you will not be a member of the church. You can be a member, but ultimately the church and the way the truth is handled there and curated to you, it's not holding your faith anymore. Your actually faith expands, the context of your faith. Although you can be, elder in a church, that doesn't really matter. But Jesus didn't end his life and say, great, now I have an organization. How many of us there are now? Like 500. Okay, let's grow. Our 501c3 and see who is in and who is out, right? He didn't do that. He actually left it behind. And I think for me and for us, leaving it behind is because religion worked, because it taught us to go. The same way parenthood, when it works, it teaches you to go. Right? You leave parents because parenting was great. If you stay in the basement with your parents and live off of that and talk about the same things and bring nothing new to the lineage, and not push life forward, you are actually, the parenting didn't work.
Yeah. So I think that's an interesting. So tell me, how would you define religion? Because of, that's a big topic. Some people see religion super negatively and some people see it super positively. The way you just used it, you said that religion was good for a season in your life, but then if you do it well, you leave it.
Right.
You leave it.
Because religion is a provision.
What is it? What's good about it? And then why should we leave it? Give us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, religion, I see it as a necessary simplification of reality. Okay?
Has all the answers, black and
necessary, but it's necessary.
Binary, right?
We cannot. Everybody, even atheism is a form of religion, right? Like, so if you can be so atheist and exclusive that you do not allow for invisible reality, and invisible reality has always followed humans, from electromagnetic waves to microbes, whatever. There is much more that we don't see than we see. And if you as an atheist denying that, you are fundamentalist stuck in your religion, right? So it cuts across everything, because reality is always bigger than our explanations of it. And religion is very concerned to explain.
Yes.
In some way, religion is something we create in order to avoid God. Right? But not on purpose. We just create it in order to be able to live with some sort of understanding and some handle on it. Right? Yeah. But ultimately, you have to, when you come to the edges of it, you realize, oh my gosh, God is on the outside of whatever my edge is. God is on the outside. Right? And that's a problem for the container. Right?
Yes.
And so searching for God in the other, I think, is the only viable way forward. If you're part of the religion, you constantly need to think, how is the non-member teaching me about my treasure? How can I learn about grace from a Muslim? How can I learn about grace from an atheist? Right? Because if I'm an expert in grace, I am a learner.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm expert in grace as a Christian because I'm a learner. Right? So God is constantly sending the outsiders to me to help me be better at it. right?
I like that.
So others do not just have a common grace, they actually have grace.
Yes, right.
Right? They actually understand grace. They don't have only irrelevant truths. They had actually relevant truths on which I depend.
Mm. Yeah,
I don't welcome a stranger. I don't welcome God.
Yeah, I mean, that's in the Torah.
Yeah.
Like
it's everywhere. It's a New Testament right there. I mean, Jesus was a stranger on a mouse road, and he was a stranger. And when he is a stranger and he gives Eucharist as a stranger to them, remember that moment?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stories there that if you look into how Christianity would never survive and never be where it is if there was no sisterhood of religions actually welcoming it and helping it.
Mm. Yeah.
Look at the wise men who never became Christians and brought the first money, the first checks to the to the baby movement and said, "Here you go. You are valid. Here's our frankincense, myrrh, and gold. This is all money, basically investors."
Generosity.
Take it and grow. And they left. They didn't get baptized, born again, none of that. So, and these were astrologers. So I'm telling Christians, whenever you see astrologers, you approach and say, "Thank you for your ancestors making my religion possible.
Right.
We owe you our existence."
I love that. I did a blog last year called, The Magi, Non-Christian Followers of Jesus is how I titled it.
Right.
But and I gave them, it is interesting, both the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament many times make the anti-hero the hero, like the outsider, like the Good Samaritan is a classic example. But there are these stories in the Hebrew Bible too, where the outsider who kind of would typically be frowned upon is made the hero and the example. And I think the wise men display like what we might call true worship. I don't know what you'd want to call it, true worship, but they followed the signs of God in the skies. They discerned God's presence in nature. They leaned into it. They recognized some special sense of incarnation through Jesus and responded with generosity and reverence. It's
we should do with other religions as well.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
because it's like you could see these, like the Islam or Judaism or Buddhism, as holding treasures for the human planet that we can all learn from. I like that. We all curators of special treasures for all humanity. Yeah. And you from your own tradition, you can learn and grow and discern and incorporate.
Yeah.
I always had that sort of instinct in my heart, but I was very conservative, very evangelistic, always wanted to lead people to Jesus. And yet at the same time, I still tried to be super gracious towards outsiders.
Yeah. I mean, I when people tell me, "Who are you?" I mean, I at one week I hate evangelicals, gosh, it's a death cult.
Right.
But then next week I say I'm evangelical. And the way I explain it, I had a sermon on Sunday in an atheist church here in New Jersey, and it was entitled, "Why Am I an Evangelical?" And they're like, "Okay, tell us." Oh, no, it was years ago. But at that time, but at that time I was already, I crossed the line from like a fundamentalist kind of a camp.
Right.
Yeah. And I said, "Why it's evangelical?" And I explained, I went one by one, the meaning of good news. And I believe in the good news. It's just that I think that current evangelicals have a really bad news. Right? They call it good news, but it's neither new nor good.
Yeah.
First of all, everybody knows it and it doesn't sound good. You think it's good, but it really sounds bad. Right? There's a better news. And better news is God is on the outside also. That God is everywhere.
Yeah.
There's so much better news than a classical thing that is, which we're not going to go into that.
Yeah. Well, tell me, like, I'm curious because who are your big influences in terms of where your journey is at now, your faith journey, because you're still very much a person of faith. And you've trying to make room for this bigger God who is present everywhere, who we encounter through the other. And there's a beautiful mystery to this journey that we're on and how we encounter God in everything.
Right.
And everybody. And so give us a little sense of who your big influences is, where you're at now.
Right.
Because I want to talk about, I'm a part of your new community that you're building called the Turn Community. And I know you've got a new book that you're talking about. So yeah, give us kind of, who are your big influences where you're at now and where you feel like you're going? And give us a sense of that.
I mean, back then, for a lot of us, the big revelation, sort of, I would say, like a second conversion, I would say, was a book by Divine Conspiracy by Dallas Willard. That blew open theologically the door from something very familiar, and we are committed to Jesus. We are committed to the good news. And he just blew the doors like that. I never sort of recovered in a good way from that. And his point was that kingdom of God is here. Enter it. Right? It's around you. It's touching your skin. It has nothing to do with. Nothing has nothing to do. It's way larger than a kind of organizational way or all of that. It's just basically he's saying that Jesus was brilliant the way he saw the world, and that kingdom of God is here, and it's God-based world, right? And that's that. That had so many implications over the years. But right now, I gravitate to. By the
way, Dallas Willard attended till the day he died a Vineyard Church for the last maybe 20 years of his life, pastored by a colleague of mine in California. And so I actually knew Dallas, and I've been in rooms with Dallas, with just a handful of people. And I loved the Divine Conspiracy. So that's interesting. I wasn't expecting you to say him. So yeah.
I mean, I had like in New York and in California, I was pastoring. I had like those kind of like 20-part series, on Dallas Willard's the Conspiracy. I knew every word in the book, but later I don't know where he ended up and where it went. Maybe he went more protective of the church organization and of the gospel, of being more exclusive. But it doesn't matter. The beautiful cat was out of the bag.
Right.
The tiger was out of the bag. And
and I don't think he would have viewed it being a part of a community as a restrictive thing. I think he was very I don't even know the right word I'm looking for, but very ecumenical in his approach.
Right. Yeah. So that then started to, open it up a lot. There was the classics like Tony Campolo and people like that who were just so playful. And it's like Leonard Cohen says, I tried to be religious, but the cheerfulness always broke through.
Isn't that good? That's good.
So if you follow ecstasy of your first love, of your conversion, of the way we saw the world when we first believed. I think you got to follow that all the way through, right? From the beginning, is that this first beginning that gave us this kind of like a undeveloped, nascent, young way of looking at this had a really truth to it. and then you quickly get bogged down. But living recklessly with that grace all the way through, you might end up either on a cross or asylum, or or some ordinary life, or a big pastor, or a writer, or whatever. It really doesn't matter. Those are irrelevant points. Jesus didn't invite us to succeed. Jesus didn't invite us to learn to love well, right? And you learn to love well. And he said, sometimes you won't be able to have a stone for under your head. And, foxes have holes you might not have. And by the way, they might kill you. Do you want to follow me? And he said, what do you promise? I promise you will be a good lover. I'm going, right? I'm going. And nothing else matters. Nothing else matters, right? Church growth doesn't matter. How many I convince, whether I'm successful or not, to the point, that to early Christians didn't matter whatever happened to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's exciting to know that we have a permission to follow that ecstasy all the way through.
I like that. So let's talk about some of your current projects. What the Turn community, which I was a part of the one of your cohort deals, and then tell us about what some of your current projects. If you want to talk about Turn or book, your coaching stuff. What's the essence of Samir right now in terms of what you want to bring to the world through what you're doing right now?
With the Turn, it's a membership-based community. None of us can. Let me put it this way: the paradox is that our personal growth and impact in the world is up to us, but none of us can do it alone, right? We need to have a witness on this journey, and whatever is not processed at the view of other human beings who accept you and do not judge you, but validate you, your identity doesn't move anywhere. Like you're kind of stuck. So the hocus pocus moment is where you actually dare to try on your new self, and you incarnate your conviction and who you are becoming in the world, and you are seen by other people and validated. Then you have shifted. Everything else is self-development pushing, but it's not happening until there is that moment that happens. So you need to do it with other people. So what we want to do is have something that provides essential care for change agents, and to do that, we have to have a connection in a community, for a number of reasons. But what we do, we bring people in and ask them to do that thing, to get that thing going. And that thing is the one you're avoiding, the one you need to do, the one that you want to do, but you're not doing, right? We all have those kind of pivotal moments or projects that we will enter that have a certain sense of discomfort about them. Then what we do is help people understand themselves. We try to really simplify in the English language, not religious language, not spiritual language, right? Spirituality, it's a spirituality adventure for sure, but that's where spirituality language stops, naming it. Everything else needs to be able, whatever we are doing needs to be able to be understood by somebody overhearing our conversation in a coffee shop. Right? Because we do have a common language that is rich, and it's not necessary to introduce confusing points in, right? So confusing labels in it. So we connect with great people, and we are really committed to have fun and not take ourselves too seriously. So if it's not fun, it's not true. Because humor is the way we actually respond to incongruencies of our lives. And if you don't have humor, you are not aware of your incongruencies. So what it does, we do like intensives with a little bit of projects that are challenging for people. And then, right now, if you go to turncommunity.com or .org, you can, there's a waiting list open and
both?
launching in September.
Is
Yeah.
it either one? You got both?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of like
turncommunity.com or turncommunity.org.
Right. And what I am doing is on my first and last name.com. And there's a link to the Turn community there too. So yeah. And what we are up to is we're trying to have like how I do a lot of cooking, right? So I have written about it, and I have done a lot of videos, and I at one point had a cooking school. The trick with cooking is that people offer you these books that have like 100 skills you need to have, or 200 recipes for life, And the book that really kind of succeeded was the book, it's called the Salt, Heat, Acid, those 4 elements that are basically simple elements that organize all of your knowledge that you can connect with each other if you get something like that. So we keep seeking something that will offer radical simplification to the overwhelm we all feel with change, uncertainty, advice, knowledge. It's a tsunami that's coming at us, all of us, and we are all overwhelmed. We do not need more knowledge. Knowledge is dead. It's like information used to be. Now with AI, what we need is a witness of each other and experience of transformation. So we are, as a society, change rich and transformation poor. Right? So how do you get not distracted by change and actually have some form of radical simplification? Because radical simplification is necessary when we deal with complexity, right? So when you go for a date, it's a very complex event, right? Very complex, physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, like a first date. It's very complex, right? Especially if stakes are high, it will decide your future, how you feel about yourself. It will affect all of your relationships. Everything is affected, right? You're figuring things out. Mm-hmm. So imagine if somebody gives you 100 things to remember, to keep in mind, to have a good first date. That's not helpful. That's not helpful. Although there are 1,000 things to remember, if you would really break it down, it's so complex. But complex does not have to be complicated, meaning we all can simplify our spirituality, our view of the world, so we can function, have an impact, and it's good enough, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than constantly expanding. So we have 5 of these kind of themes, and I always ask people to come with the 6th one that is their own. So that's what I think about and write about, and I'm right now working on a book, or might be a series that is dealing with that, and it's just a plain English that is drawn from ancient traditions, neuroscience, poetry, and it's very intuitive and very, very simplistic. Because the more simple it is, the more useful it is. Sometimes simple things can capture a lot of complexity. Like, for example, if you go for a date, I have one advice. Just listen and be present there. Just notice what's happening and react to what is happening. That's all. That's the advice. Don't worry about how you dress. Don't worry about any of these things, any of these stuff you learn about women or men, or, forget about all of this. Be there. Practice being there. There may be 2 or 3 more, but this one is ground advice. And whatever happens, you come back and you will learn from it, and you will be better for it, and relationship will go into the direction it has to go to. Right? That's it. So there are many rules like that.
Man, we need to come back. Like, I'm 62, and I'm I'm single, right? So yeah, so we could come back and we could do a whole deal on dating advice for Fred.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. I love that. I have two daughters. I have spent a lot of life energy trying to figure that out. Yeah.
Here I am trying to figure it out now at my age. Yeah. I didn't date much until I met my former wife and started dating at 19, got married at 21, and
I
then,
see.
then it unraveled a few years ago after
Hey,
30.
so much is awaiting for you, man.
So yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like my whole life unraveled, Samir, you know this. And then
Yeah.
now I'm like, oh, okay. Well, now what do I do with my life? I'm still alive. I'm still breathing.
Yeah.
So I move forward. How does, how do people like Samir and communities like you're building help people who go through, sometimes it might be a crisis. Sometimes it might just be, a dissatisfaction with your life and you want to transition into a deeper connection with yourself, with
I don't know
others.
if you remember, but one thing we talked about a turn is this idea of sunken costs. Like we feel that a lot of things in our lives that we would like to take back that were like a wrong turns or blind streets or bogs, where places that we would rather not be there, that have absorbed so much of our energy and we have invested in.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're sunken costs. They're like, well, that's the cost of doing business, kind of a thing. You grieve over the loss, right? But the thing is, who you are right now, your perspective on life is because of these events. These events are directly informing and giving depth and beauty to your perspective on life right now that we need, right? We all need your perspective. We all need you to double down on your crazy and move into the world. One of the books I entitled, We Need You Crazy.
Yeah. I'm all in on that one, man.
Right. So doubling down on that and learning to articulate it and be more gracious to yourself and to others is the only way for these costs to be actually feed you, and give you the great strength instead of being something that you lose, that you have lost and grieve over. We do need to grieve over things, obviously, but
right.
But this informs your unique perspective.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So people can jump on the turncommunity.org or .com and like they could actually look at that and jump in.
Right. Right now it's a wait list there.
Okay.
Like an interest list. If they go to my email, my first and last name.com, they can subscribe to my newsletter. So that's how we can stay in touch.
Okay.
That's where it will start. That's how we can start being in touch. But yeah.
And then you also do executive coaching, life coaching, corporate.
Yeah. I do a lot of like a corporate things. That's kind of like a main, I do that 3 days a week. And there are people from, all industries. I have a lot of people from like telecommunications and army, but all kinds of, and you just realize how people are so much the same, how we're all similar in what it means to be human. And it's also coaching that goes beyond, it's post-professional, meaning I try to help people deal with the unknown and deal with the mystery in their lives. Because if you learn to be a good human being, you will be good at your work, right? Professional training has exploded to the point that we actually people need to be more resilient human beings and more loving human beings toward other people, and then they will excel in no matter what they do, right? And I think that's people come for one thing, but then they get another. People usually, how can I become vice president? And this is what I want. I'm like, really? That's what you want? Yes, that's what I want. Okay, well, let's talk about it. And then later they realize, I actually might have a better goal than that.
Mm.
Right? There's better things in life. Just one thing I want to plug in and about common good, because we have, been part of the votecommongood.org.
Yeah. When when I interviewed Doug Padgett, we got to that. We touched on that at the end of his interview. It was good.
Right.
You're part of the original board that helped create Vote Common Good.
Yes, actually, Doug and I were co-founders. We decided we had a little bit of too much, roasted lamb here and the red wine, and came up with the idea that we will not do another conference or event and invite people, but we'll go around the country in a bus.
Okay.
And so that was really, really something. What I was saying, how the secret of the personal growth, that it is not personal. It is actually common good. It's the moment you can decenter yourself from your ultimate concern is prerequisite for you to grow, right? So constantly trying to improve yourself and be better and focus on that, it works to a point. It works in a way if you hold yourself loosely and you care for common good mainly. Right, which is another word for kingdom of God that Jesus talked about. It's just another name for it. So people feel a great relief to not have to constantly be their best self, have best experience. People are so obsessing about shortness of life, and they have to have best experiences, be their best self. All of that kind of thing, self-development that is supposed to give you the way, but it becomes on the way. And so you got to simplify that. And don't read any self-help, self-development book for a year and see what happens. Paying attention to who you are already and what life is around you, rather than adding more and more advice. Although, obviously, advice is good for all of us, but it's good because there's also empty space, white space where things can occur, and you need that. From Genesis 1:1, every beginning has empty space. So,
yeah, you're right. A little chaos in the mix, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A little tohu vabohu is how they
say it. Yes.
Yeah, you know that well, right?
Yeah.
The empty and the void.
Yes.
Bohu is the first sentence of the Genesis.
Yeah. And actually, I heard from rabbis and the Buddhists, that it says in the beginnings, not in the beginning. It's actually in the beginnings, meaning every beginning. Meaning in my beginning of a relationship, if I want to date, in my beginning of vocation, my beginning of writing something, of living today, getting up today, there is an emptiness that I need to create in order for things have space to appear and be, rather than crowding that space. And I think it's just such a amazing. The problem with the Bible is that you need more than one lifetime to understand anything. And it's a problem with religion. Religions are so deep and so beautiful, each of them, that you need 500 years to understand each one, but you only have one life.
I know.
Right. So you're stuck with partial understanding of everything that you could know, a minuscule part of all the great things of one story.
Yeah.
Right.
I could either wish for reincarnations, come back as a Muslim and really do a deep dive in the Quran and that whole history, or come back as a Buddhist, do a deep dive there, or, and then, we could do it the other way and have a matrix download where, they just stick that thing in the back of your head.
Right. Yeah.
and now I know Kung Fu, right? So
Yeah. Or what helps me is, give up on wanting to know more.
oh yeah.
uh, and let people have their own story. That what helps me. Like, let them have a story I don't understand.
Mm.
I don't need to. They don't need to be known. Individuals in a relationship don't need to be known. The moment you say to your lover, "I know you," is the moment you don't.
Mm.
The moment you are kidding yourself, because you don't even know you. I don't even know myself, and I have really access, but I don't. I have a stranger in me. So when you say, "I want to know your faith," they're like, "No, you can't know my faith. I don't know my faith."
Mm.
Right? So let others be experts in that. It's like food. You don't want to have all restaurant mixed in one. You do want a Thai restaurant, you do want a Japanese, you do want a Bosnian, and you want them to shine, and you're a guest that is welcome to partake, and then you go back and you run your own so they can visit.
Yeah, the richness of the tapestry of life, and being able to be present with it in all its different manifestations. I love your emphasis on uncertainty and unknowing as well, because I think even like back when, like Moses saying, "Well, God, who should I say sent me?" And then, God doesn't like it, just, well, tell him. And then there's this word, there's this verb for being.
Mm-hmm.
Tell him, "I am sent."
Yeah.
Oh, well, well, that makes perfect sense. I am. Oh yeah, of course. Hey, everybody, I am sent me.
Yeah.
Being the presence and being and mystery of the universe that we can't know and can't be certain quite about. Yeah. It's a mystery, but that's who I'm, yes.
I love that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
And we have a right, because we're in God image, as you talk about original blessing. I know you are thinking and talking a lot about that.
Yeah.
Is that original blessing is being created in the image of God before sin, right? So this original blessing is before the blessing of. It's a first grace. First grace is to exist. We do not need sin to explain God.
That's right.
If God needs sin to be explained, that's really small God, right? So there was a first grace. But if you mess up, there is a second and third and whatever grace you need. That's fine. But then this first grace is that you do not know. When God says "I am," and if you're in the image of God, you can say "I am" back to God. Well, God, I am, right? And God says, "No, you are not. I am." No, God says, "Great, you are mystery too. You are mystery too, even to me. You have a free choice, actually." Right? Yeah. So I love that. I'm God. I don't need to know everything. I'm so powerful that I can decide not to know everything.
And so loving that he doesn't have to control everything, or she.
Exactly.
Or anything. Yeah.
I don't even want to know what you're going to do next. So because I want you to be yourself in the universe. And that's what Dallas Willard was saying. Dallas Willard, they have so many famous lines. One is, God wants to let you loose in the universe to do what you want to do. God wants you to come to a place where you can do what you want to do. Not what God wants to do, but what you want to do. And he has illustration of a daughter coming to you in the morning and you're saying to the daughter, "What would you like for breakfast?" Right? And then she says, "Whatever you want, Dad." I said, "No, I got up to do what you like to do." Right? "No, but you're my dad and I love you. Why don't we do, I want you, what you want, my dad." I I said, no, you don't understand. My desire for you and for me is for us to do what you want to do. And she doesn't understand. That's what a lot of Christians, where they are. They don't understand that they have a freedom to be and do and want, and they're safe in that space.
I like that.
Anyway.
That's a good thought to wrap up on. It made me think of that psalm that talked about delight yourself in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart. But to me, that's such an interesting thing, because delight yourself in the mystery of the universe.
Yes.
And then the desires of your heart flow out of that love affair with the mystery of the universe, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a discipline to that. And Isaiah, I think 58, where he talks about Sabbath, and he says, if you don't do what you want and make Sabbath a delight, meaning, I do not do what I want, but I have my delight. Right? Meaning that sometimes and often what we want will bring us to a place we don't want to be. Right? So I don't want to go to a gym. Right? I don't want to. I just want to sit in front of TV and eat another sandwich. Okay? But I don't do that. I go to gym, I go for a walk, I call my mom, and suddenly I'm in a delight. Right? But I have to follow that real delight. Even if it asks me to do things I don't want to do, but follow that delight. Right? And it's not about just doing what you want to do. It's doing whatever it's necessary to follow the heat, or like a missile, like of a delight that you are going for, whether it's doing or not doing, whether it is, relaxing or working hard. It doesn't really matter. That's not the issue. The issue is ecstasy.
I fell into a burning ring of fire.
Yeah. Burning ring of fire. I love that. We should just tune in Johnny Cash right now.
All right. Well, man, thank you, Samir, for taking time to share some of your life story with the audience at Spirituality Adventures. And I encourage everybody to jump into the Turn thing. Check it out. I'm a part of that community and love to have some people join in with us as well. And I hope to be in New York sometime before the end of this year as well. So
hey, I can't. That would be great.
I want to make sure that you're in town when I come.
So much to do. Yeah.
So,
and if you ever go to Croatia, let me know. I'll tell you where to go. It's kind of a cool place to go now.
I've never been. Yeah, I haven't been to that part of the world, actually. So
I go every year, every summer. Yeah.
I've seen a few of your pictures.
Oh, I see.
And I don't know how I saw some of them. Maybe it was on some of your posts or something, but some beautiful scenery there. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in to Spirituality Adventures, and thank you, Samir, for joining us. People, check out. You can go to Amazon, check out Samir's book. He's got a new book in the project, his Turn community, and then you can find out about the executive coaching, life coaching that he does as well too. So, delight to talk with you. Thank you.
Yeah, same here. It's so wonderful. We have these rectangles to connect, but it's like a wormhole,
I know.
I used to be frustrated about it, but now I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God, that we have this technology.
Yeah.
I'm not snooty about it anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, great. All right. So come and we'll see you in person soon.
Look forward to it. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.